Hey everybody, welcome back to Fridays with Dan and Dave, coming to you from REMAX Experience here in Stones Corner today. Big welcome, Dan. How's your week, mate?
Yeah,
How's the
can't
weather?
complain. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
busy. So the sun's out today. So hopefully it stays like
hope
that tomorrow for the
for
open homes.
Saturday. Yeah,
Fingers
for
crossed.
sure. So guys, this is obviously where we talk all things real estate, mainly residential. Um, Dan, what's our topic for today?
Today's topic will be in regard to buying off the plan, what exactly that means, when is a good time to do it, and when it might suit your circumstances to complete an off the plan purchase.
For sure. Okay, so specifically here we're talking about apartments and townhouses, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, not like your house and land package in the burbs, further out in the burbs. So, all right, so today we probably should touch on exactly what is buying off the plan. Um, so buying off the plan is essentially um, purchasing an apartment or a townhouse whereby maybe the construction hasn't started or it has, or it's finished but the survey plan of the new plan is not yet registered. So there's really three stages there you could purchase off the plan. Something to think about though is, a lot of people ask me, is it a risky thing buying off the plan? But the reality is you're still protected by all the legislation you would be if you bought an established home.
Yep.
So it is safe. We're going to talk about some of the little risks that are inherent though with buying off the plan as well. So um, today, purchasing off the plan could be pre-construction, or it could be during the phase of the construction happening, or it could be at the end of the construction or near the end of the construction, but before the plan registers. So when is the best time out of those three areas to buy, and why, and what are the risks associated with it? So we know that if a developer is launching a property to market pre-construction, that there is typically a reason for that, and that will be to obtain the funding to get construction going. And lenders often have strict requirements for property developers with that, and that might be you've got to have a certain amount of your construction debt recovered. It might be 100%, it might be 120% recovered, and they might need cash contracts or with 5 or 10% deposit. Um, and it might mean that they have a limited number of investors or a limited number of foreign buyers and things like that. So the properties will go to market off the plan. Now, the good thing about buying at that stage, Dan, of course, is
Well, you're locking in at today's prices. So typically, if an off-the-plan apartment complex took 2 3 years to build, they'll be advertising the properties at today's prices. You get to lock in at that price
yeah,
and secure the property, for when it settles, which will be 2 to 3 years likely.
yeah. You also get the most choice of what's within the building or within the project as far as the stock. So if you jump in early, you'll get the most number of three bedders or two bedders or one bedders, whatever you're looking for, is more likely to be available at a good price. The downside is you have to wait longer for it, but the plus side of that is you get to save more too. So for first home buyers or even next home buyers, that's often a really useful thing. Um, Purchasing, I suppose the big risk of purchasing prior to the construction is the biggest risk we see is if the developer doesn't get enough pre-sales and they don't get the funding to get started, then of course the situation happens where the project never gets off the ground and the poor buyer gets their purchase deposit refunded. So um, the next area in which to buy is during the construction. So um, by this point in time, we know that the developer's got their finance, and so you know, Dan, take us through a few of the benefits of that.
Yeah, once the project has started, obviously there's some confidence that it will be completed. So you can almost go and look at the property, see what it looks like in sunlight, all the rest of it from the street at least. And you have the option at that stage of knowing where you'll be in the future, so you can plan your circumstances between that and obviously when it does get through to settlement. Yeah, so there is less risk at that stage where the construction has already begun. There's slightly less variety in floor plans or stock available in the complex because some people have already purchased because they needed to get those sales through to get the construction underway. The other thing you'll notice is prices will start to slowly increase in the complex. So prices, as David mentioned, those pre-sale ones are usually the best time or the cheapest time to buy in. As the complex gets closer to the end of the construction, the prices will increase. So that brings us to the next point, which is the buying at the time where the construction is actually finished.
Yeah, so you can still purchase on and off the plan contract right up until the point where the title registers or the survey plan is now registered. So there may still be opportunities in some projects to acquire what you're looking for right up to the point where the building is finished or almost finished and the plan is in plan sealing at council. So what that means is at that point in time, you can see it, you know it's going to be finished very shortly, and you know you're going to be able to move in or you're going to be able to move your tenants in, for that matter. A lot less risk at that point. The downside is there is limited stock available at that point in almost every project. So, and the prices have probably crept significantly. From our experience, we see that happen all the time. The good thing is though, you don't have to wait. So if you are saving and saving and saving and you find a project that's in your market that you like, don't be afraid to buy it because, it's essentially still a brand new property and will still qualify for any first home buyer grants and any stamp duty concessions at that point too. So that's definitely something to think about. I suppose, Dan, a couple of questions we get asked all the time is, when I pay my deposit, how much deposit is it? Where's the deposit kept? And then, of course, the sunset date. How long is the building going to take? What if it doesn't finish? What happens? So
yeah, one point I always find interesting is how much the deposit is. So typically it's between 5 and 10%. That would be general.
Yeah.
Typically, if it's 10%, that would mean that that's a stipulation from the developer's financier. So that's always a bit of interesting to look at. And if they're 5%, generally it means that there's they're a cash builder and they're doing it on their own back. If it's 10%, that's usually because not the developer, but someone behind the scenes needs it to be 10%. So that deposit's usually held in the sales agent's trust account. So the real estate agent's trust account, and that can't be accessed by the developer at all. He can't use that money to use it for construction, and it can't leave our trust account unless both parties agree, so unless your solicitor and the seller's solicitor agree. And our trust account is audited all the time, isn't it?
Quarterly trust accounts are. The other thing too is you can't release any funds from trust account on and off the plan purchase until the plan registers anyway. It's illegal. So with regards to the deposit is held in trust, as Dan said. It can be the developer's solicitor's trust account or it can be the selling agent's trust account, but either or, it is safeguarded by trust accounting legislation. With regards to the payment of that deposit, buyers often ask, well, do I have to pay instalments during the construction? And the answer to that is, on a residential lot in an off-the-plan contract, the answer is no. Typically, you'll pay your 5 or your 10% deposit of your initial purchase price, and that purchase price is then locked in with no variations. So I think that's a really key thing too. Unlike you sign a house and land package, you might have to pay progress payments with that along the way.
I'll just add, typically the deposit is only paid once the contract is fully signed. So you don't have to pay the deposit and then get the contract. Typically you'll get that contract, you get ample time to have it reviewed by your solicitor. So often maybe up to a week to have it reviewed, and then you would pay your deposit only after you've signed the contract.
Yeah, of course. So the process begins with signing an expression of interest form, which is a pretty simple information gathering exercise really, that allows the solicitors acting for the developer to prepare all the contract documentation. Let's go back to So the process, guys, begins with signing an expression of interest form once you've found the property that you like. Once that information is gathered on there and that form is approved by the property developer, it then goes to their solicitor. Their solicitor will take some time to draft contract documentation, there's a lot in it. There's a lot more disclosed in that situation than often buying something established as well. And so I would say to you, if your solicitor's reviewing the contract and they had any advice for you, it would be to say, go by what's contained in the contract, not by what you've read on the brochures too, because sometimes things do change. Agents should be updating all that marketing material throughout the process, but sometimes there's variations that are unavoidable that might be fire requirements or council or even utility requirements. So, and there's provisions in the contracts for that. But the one last thing I think, Dan, we need to just touch on is a thing called a sunset date that often confuses people, but it is very, very clear, isn't it?
Yeah, so on and off the plan purchase, the sunset date basically is the last date that the developer can have the property ready for you to settle. Buyers often think it's wise to shorten that time frame so that they're not potentially going to lose their deposit and have to buy back into the market. The downside to that is that if the project does go, 6 months longer, then the developer can resell your property. So it's often in your best interest to keep it as long as possible in this market, especially with construction taking as long as it does now.
I don't think in 20 odd years of doing this, I've seen any of my clients cancel the contract due to a sunset date. They've all seen that as a agreement, and while we've had some buyers cancel over this time, I've never had one of my property developer clients cancel, which is really good.
Yeah.
It is a risk, like your sunset date can be, 3 years, 4 years, 4.5 years, and it is tempting to want to shorten that date. However, as Daniel said before, if that construction gets drawn out, as has been the case regularly over the last few years since COVID, you can find yourself in a situation where some developers might terminate on you and refund you your purchaser's deposit.
And the sunset date too, it's not, if the sunset date is 5 years, it's not that the developer is expecting it will take 5 years, but it may be something behind the scenes from their finance that they need that to be part of the contract for them, for the property to be built. So it's not any malice from the developer. Sometimes it's third-party factors, which mean that needs to be a certain length of time.
Yeah, I think the only time I'd be curious about shortening a sunset date if I was buying off the plan would be in a really uncertain market that showed signs of a spiral downwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then I might shorten that sunset date.
Yeah. And a sunset date would change between some townhouses. If they're building 60, if you're buying an off-the-plan townhouse, so there's 6 of them, that would be a shorter sunset date than, say, 100 apartments being built. And
correct. Yeah. I think the last project we had, the sunset date on 88 apartments was 4.5 years.
Yeah.
But typically, if you were seeing a project of 10 or 15 townhouses, it might be 3 years. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I think there's lots more to talk about here. We're going to come back and maybe in a future episode of this, maybe discuss this a bit more.
Absolutely,
Some other elements of buying off the plan and what that looks like. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comments below there and we'll do our best to get back to you. Have an awesome week, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.